When I think back now, the signs were always there. They weren't huge, glaring red flags at first, more like small warning lights on a dashboard, the kind you ignore because you don't want to believe something's wrong with the car you rely on every day. That's what my friendship with Sarah felt like. Comfortable, safe, familiar. She was my best friend since middle school, and I trusted her with everything, my secrets, my insecurities, my future plans, even the kind of wedding dress I wanted one day. Sarah and I had always been inseparable. We were the girls who wore matching pajamas at sleepovers, made late-night Taco Bell runs in high school, and swore we'd be each other's maid of honor when the time came. She wasn't just my best friend, she was practically family. My parents loved her, my little brother treated her like a sister, and when I started dating Jake, it felt only natural to introduce him to her. Jake was different from the guys I'd dated before, charming but not arrogant, funny without trying too hard, and steady in a way that made me feel safe. From the beginning, Sarah seemed genuinely happy for me. She would tease me about how smitten I looked when I talked about him, and she'd listen to every silly detail about our dates. I thought she was just being the supportive best friend she had always been. The first time something felt off, it was almost laughable. Sarah posted a picture on Instagram of her at a new coffee shop downtown. Cute latte art, fairy lights in the background, the kind of place influencers loved. When I saw it, I didn't think much of it, until I noticed Jake's jacket sleeve in the corner of the frame. I blinked, zoomed in, and thought, weird, that looks just like Jake's jacket. I asked him about it later that night when we were FaceTiming. Oh, yeah, he said casually, running a hand through his hair. I ran into Sarah there. Total coincidence. We ended up grabbing a coffee together. I didn't think it was worth mentioning. His tone was relaxed, unconcerned, like I was the one making something out of nothing. And honestly, maybe I was. Sarah had texted me the same day, joking that I should check out the coffee shop with Jake sometime. The story lined up, so I laughed it off, even teased them about being coffee buddies. But that was the first spark of unease. The second one came a few weeks later. Sarah and Jake both showed up tagged in someone else's story from a friend's house party. It was late, I was already in bed studying for finals, and I hadn't even known either of them were going. I swiped through the story again, trying to convince myself it wasn't strange. After all, Sarah was friends with half the city, and Jake knew people from college. It wasn't impossible that they both ended up at the same party. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. The pit in my stomach lingered. When I asked Sarah about it the next day, she rolled her eyes with a laugh. Seriously? You think I plan to bump into your boyfriend at some random party? Chill, girl, we literally talked for like 10 minutes about your obsession with Grey's Anatomy reruns. Her response was so casual, so dismissive, that I felt embarrassed for even bringing it up. She made me feel like I was overreacting, like I was just the jealous girlfriend stereotype. And Jake? When I mentioned it to him, he chuckled. Babe, you know how small this city is. Everyone knows everyone. You're reading way too much into it. The way they both mirrored each other, same tone, same phrasing, same casual dismissal, should have been the third warning sign. Instead, I convinced myself it was a coincidence. That's the thing about betrayal. When it's creeping up on you, your brain fights it every step of the way. You don't want to believe the people you love could be capable of hurting you. You cling to excuses, to the idea that you're paranoid, because the alternative is so much worse. I remember one night in particular. Sarah came over for one of our girls' nights. We ordered pizza, opened a bottle of cheap wine, and binge-watched a reality dating show on Netflix. At some point, she picked up her phone and smiled at a text. Who's that? I asked, half curious, half nosy. She smirked, tossing her hair back. Oh, it's nothing. Just Jake sending me a meme. I laughed along with her at the time, but later, lying in bed, it hit me. Why was Jake sending her memes instead of me? He and I shared hundreds of inside jokes. If he found something funny, why not text it to me first? I brushed it off again. Told myself it was fine, that friends can send each other memes. But deep down, I felt that familiar spark of unease turn into a flame. The final straw in chapter 1 of this story, the part I'll never forget, was the photo that made everything too real to ignore. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I was scrolling through Instagram while waiting for Jake to pick me up for brunch. That's when I saw it. A group picture from a mutual friend's rooftop barbecue. Sarah was front and center, holding a red Solo cup, grinning at the camera. And right next to her, with his arm casually draped along the back of her chair, was Jake. They weren't holding hands. They weren't doing anything explicitly romantic. But the closeness was undeniable, the kind that made my stomach twist. I hadn't even been invited to that barbecue. Neither of them had mentioned it to me. I stared at the picture for what felt like hours, my chest tightening, my palms sweating. Was I crazy? Was I seeing things that weren't there? Or was there something Sarah wasn't telling me? When Jake arrived at my apartment a few minutes later, I didn't say anything. I smiled, kissed him hello, and went to brunch like nothing was wrong. But inside, a storm was brewing. That's how betrayal starts. It doesn't explode all at once. It seeps in slowly, quietly, like water leaking through cracks in the ceiling. By the time you notice the damage, it's already everywhere. And deep down, I knew. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. At first, I kept telling myself I was overreacting. That picture from the rooftop barbecue? It was just one snapshot, one moment in time. People read too much into Instagram all the time. Maybe Jake had only sat next to Sarah for 5 minutes, and the camera caught it at the worst possible angle. That's what I repeated to myself like a mantra. But the thing about doubt is that once it creeps in, it doesn't leave quietly. It lingers, whispering in your ear at night when you're trying to sleep, replaying every small detail you brushed off. And soon, the whispers became impossible to ignore. The next coincidence happened a week later. Jake texted me one evening saying he was stuck late at work, so I made myself dinner and curled up with my laptop. Out of habit, I opened Snapchat and scrolled through the stories. That's when I froze. Sarah had posted a short clip at a bowling alley, laughing, cheering, the camera panning across the neon lights. And there, in the background, unmistakable in his gray hoodie and baseball cap, was Jake. My heart sank. I replayed the snap 3, 4, 5 times, zooming in just to be sure. There was no mistaking it. My boyfriend was at the bowling alley with my best friend on a night he had told me he was working late. I sat there staring at my phone, pulse racing, debating what to do. Do I confront him? Do I call Sarah? Do I act like I haven't seen it? The longer I stared, the more my brain spun in circles. Finally, I texted Sarah. Looks like you're having fun tonight. Who all went bowling? She replied almost instantly, OMG, it was so random. Jake texted me because he finished work early and wanted to hang out. I wasn't gonna say no, lol. Don't worry, we just bowled a couple games. You'd have hated it anyway, you always say you suck at bowling. It was casual, too casual, like she had a perfectly packaged excuse waiting in her back pocket. Jake's explanation later that night wasn't much different. Oh yeah, I bumped into Sarah. Figured I'd kill some time before heading home. I didn't think it was a big deal, babe. The way they both downplayed it, like I was the crazy one for even questioning it, made me feel small. Like maybe they were right. Maybe I was just jealous, insecure, imagining things. That was the beginning of the gaslighting phase. Anytime I brought up a situation that didn't sit right with me, Sarah would laugh and call me Paranoid Emily. She'd say things like, girl, if I wanted Jake, I would have gone for him a long time ago. And Jake would echo the same sentiment, you know you're the only one I want. Don't let your imagination ruin this for us. It was always me, my fault, my jealousy, my insecurities, but deep down, the unease kept growing. One Saturday night, Sarah invited me out for drinks with a group of friends. I wasn't really in the mood. I'd had a long week at work, but she insisted. It'll be fun, Em. You've been so stressed. Just come for one drink. So I went. And that's when I noticed something new. The way she looked at Jake. It was subtle, but it was there. The lingering glances when she thought no one was watching. The way her laugh got louder and more high-pitched when he told a joke. How she leaned just a little too close when he spoke to her, hand brushing his arm as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced a smile, ordered another drink, and tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Again, the turning point for me was one night at my apartment. Jake had left his phone on the coffee table when he went to the bathroom. Normally, I never went through his stuff. I believed in trust, in giving people privacy. But that night, something in me snapped. The screen lit up with a notification. A message from Sarah. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. It wasn't anything explicit. Just a meme. A stupid TikTok screenshot with a joke about couples arguing over food orders. But what caught my attention was Jake's reply, sitting just above it. Lol, this is literally us. Us. Not you and Emily. Not me and Emily. Just us. Like they were the couple. Like they had inside jokes that didn't include me. I put the phone down, hands shaking, and when Jake came back, I acted normal. But inside, I was crumbling. After that, the coincidences piled up faster than I could keep track. Sarah posting a story from a concert I couldn't afford to go to, Jake's favorite band, and there he was next to her in the blurry crowd shot. Jake mentioning a new restaurant he wanted to try sometime, only for Sarah to text me later raving about the exact same place. The time Sarah slipped and called Jake, babe, in front of me, then laughed it off like it was some kind of inside joke. Each time, I told myself it was nothing. Each time, I let them convince me I was crazy. But at night, lying awake in the dark, the doubts were suffocating. I started replaying every conversation, every laugh they shared, every text notification that lit up Jake's phone. Was I losing my best friend and my boyfriend at the same time? Or had I already lost them, and I was just too afraid to admit it? Looking back, chapter 2 of my story feels like the slow drowning part. When you're flailing in the water, but no one notices because you're still above the surface, still smiling, still laughing at the right jokes. Everyone thought Sarah and I were the perfect example of best friends forever. Everyone thought Jake and I were the perfect couple. But behind the curtain, cracks were forming, and I was the only one who could see them. The coincidences weren't coincidences anymore. They were patterns. And patterns don't lie. They say your gut instinct is rarely wrong. Mine had been screaming at me for weeks, maybe even months, but I kept silencing it. I kept telling myself Sarah wouldn't betray me. Jake wouldn't betray me. Not them. Not the two people I trusted most. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how hard you try to bury it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. I was sitting on the couch, half watching a true crime documentary, while Jake showered after work. His phone buzzed on the table. Normally, I ignored it. I hated the idea of snooping, hated what it said about me. But this time, something in me shifted. The screen lit up. A notification from Sarah. Not unusual, Sarah texted me constantly too. But what froze me was the preview. Don't forget what we talked about. We need to figure out the timing. My heart slammed against my chest. Timing for what? I picked up the phone, hands trembling, and against every promise I'd ever made myself about respecting privacy, I opened their conversation. What I found changed everything. At first, it looked harmless enough. Jokes, memes, random chatter. But then I scrolled further back, and the tone shifted. Sarah. Once it's official, things will be so much easier for me. Jake. I know. Just be patient. I can't just drop everything with Emily overnight. Sarah. I've been patient for months. You know what's at stake for me. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. I scrolled faster. Sarah again. If we get married, I'll finally get my green card. No more worrying about visas, no more stress. You're my way out, Jake. Don't screw this up. Married. Green card. My best friend was planning her future with my boyfriend, using him as her ticket to stay in the country. I felt sick. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The coincidences, the random hangouts, the constant gaslighting. Sarah hadn't just stumbled into my relationship. She'd targeted it, planned it, step by step. She'd been pulling him away from me, not because she loved him, but because she needed him. And Jake? He wasn't innocent either. He hadn't shut it down. He hadn't told me. He'd been entertaining her, stringing me along while she tightened her grip. I dropped the phone like it burned me and stumbled to the bathroom. The shower was still running. Jake was humming to himself, completely oblivious. I stared at the door, torn between storming in and screaming at him, or collapsing on the floor and crying until there was nothing left. Instead, I did neither. I quietly went back to the couch, heart racing, mind spinning, and waited. When he came out, towel around his waist, hair dripping, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Like he wasn't planning a future with my so-called best friend. I couldn't look at him. I mumbled something about being tired and went to bed early, but sleep was impossible. All night, I lay awake, replaying those messages in my head. You're my way out, Jake. Don't screw this up. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, cold, manipulative. Sarah had been my sister, my confidant, the one person I thought I could always count on. And now I realized she'd been sharpening the knife behind my back the whole time. The next day, I tested them. I texted Sarah. Hey, thinking of planning a trip for the summer. Maybe we could go somewhere, just us girls like we used to? Her reply was instant. I'd love to, but things are so crazy right now. I'm focused on other plans. Other plans. I knew exactly what that meant. When I mentioned the idea of a trip to Jake later, he gave me the same excuse. This summer's probably not the best time. Work's busy, plus I've got other stuff going on. The way their words mirrored each other sent chills down my spine. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was proof. By Friday, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I invited Sarah over for a wine night, pretending everything was fine. She showed up cheerful as ever, bottle of rosé in hand, hugging me like she hadn't been plotting to steal my life. We sat on the couch, sipping wine, laughing about old memories. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Almost. Then I asked, casually, "So, how's the whole visa situation going? You still stressed about it?" Her smile froze for just a second. Barely noticeable, but I caught it. She set her glass down carefully. "Why do you ask?" I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Just curious. You used to talk about it all the time, remember? But lately you've been quiet about it." She laughed, too loudly. "Oh, I guess I've just been distracted with other things. You know me." That was it. The confirmation I needed. I wanted to throw my glass in her face. I wanted to scream, "I know what you're doing. I know everything." But instead, I smiled back, my hands trembling under the table. Because in that moment, I realized something. Sarah wasn't just betraying me. She didn't even feel guilty about it. She was enjoying the game. That night, after she left, I sat alone in the silence of my apartment, the pieces finally fitting together. Sarah had never been the supportive best friend she pretended to be. Every coffee date, every accidental hangout, every laugh at Jake's jokes, it was all part of her plan. And Jake? He wasn't strong enough to resist. Maybe he liked the attention. Maybe he liked being needed. Or maybe he just didn't care enough about me to stop it. Either way, the truth was clear. My best friend was using my boyfriend as her golden ticket. And the two people I loved most were in on it together. That was the night something inside me broke. Not in the way that makes you crumble, but in the way that makes you dangerous. Because once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. And once someone shows you exactly how little you mean to them, there's only one thing left to do. Decide what you're going to do about it. The hardest part about betrayal isn't the lies. It isn't even the cheating. It's the performance. Watching two people you love look you straight in the eye and act like nothing's wrong, knowing the entire time they're hiding knives behind their backs, that's what broke me. After I uncovered the messages between Sarah and Jake, I spent days pretending. Pretending I didn't know, pretending I was still the same naive Emily they thought they were fooling. But under the surface, I was planning. I wasn't going to let them gaslight me anymore. I wasn't going to be the crazy girlfriend or the paranoid best friend. I needed proof, and I needed them to face it. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Jake invited me to dinner at his apartment on Saturday night. "Just us," he said, like he was trying to reassure me. I agreed, but inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. Before leaving, I slipped my iPad into my bag. Jake's messages synced to it sometimes when he was on my Wi-Fi, something he'd never bothered to disable. I didn't tell him. I didn't have to. Dinner was awkward. He tried to act normal, laughing at his own jokes, asking about my week, but I couldn't bring myself to play along. Every smile felt fake. Every word felt rehearsed. When he went to the kitchen to grab more wine, I checked my iPad under the table. Sure enough, a new message popped up. From Sarah. "Can't wait to see you later. Don't keep me waiting too long." My stomach dropped, but at the same time, fire surged through me. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. I set the iPad down and took a deep breath. By the time Jake returned, I wasn't shaking anymore. I was calm. Too calm. "Jake," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "How long have you and Sarah been sneaking around behind my back?" He froze, the wine bottle dangling midair. "What are you talking about?" I didn't flinch. I slid the iPad across the table. "Read it yourself." His face went pale as he glanced at the screen. For a second, I thought he might try to deny it again. But the silence spoke louder than any excuse. "That's what I thought," I whispered. The next day, I confronted Sarah. I texted her. "Can you come over? Need to talk." She showed up cheerful, like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just been exposed. "Hey, girl," she chirped, setting her bag down. "What's up?" I didn't waste time. I pulled up the screenshots I'd saved and shoved the phone into her hands. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. Then, unbelievably, she laughed. "So you finally found out," she said, tossing the phone onto the couch. "Took you long enough." Her lack of remorse hit me harder than the betrayal itself. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even embarrassed. She was smug. "Why, Sarah?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "You had everything, you had me, our friendship, my trust. Why him?" She crossed her arms, smirking. Because, Emily, unlike you, I think about my future. Do you have any idea how hard it is to stay in this country without a green card? Do you know how many sleepless nights I've spent worrying about visas and deadlines? Jake is my way out. My ticket to the life I deserve. Her words cut deeper than any knife. So you just decided my relationship didn't matter? I whispered. Please, she scoffed. You were always too naive to keep someone like Jake. You never noticed the way he looked at me. Honestly, I'm doing you a favor. That was it. The last shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, my best friend could be saved. I stood up, pointing toward the door. Get out. She tilted her head, smirking like she'd already won. Fine, but don't be surprised when he chooses me over you. And with that, she walked out of my life. Jake tried to apologize. He sent flowers, texted me paragraphs, even showed up outside my apartment once, begging me to talk. It was a mistake, Emily, he pleaded. I got caught up. I didn't mean to hurt you. You're the one I love. But love isn't supposed to feel like betrayal. Love isn't supposed to make you doubt your worth. So I let him cry, let him beg, and then I shut the door. The weeks that followed were brutal. Nights spent crying into my pillow, mornings spent dragging myself out of bed just to keep moving. Losing a boyfriend hurts. Losing a best friend hurts. Losing both at the same time? It feels like losing yourself. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. The only direction left is up. Slowly, I started putting myself back together. I went to the gym. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected while wrapped up in Jake and Sarah's drama. I threw myself into work. Most importantly, I learned to be okay on my own. One night, months later, I got a DM from an old mutual friend. A screenshot. It was Sarah, posting a crying selfie on her story with the caption, "Some people will never understand loyalty." Heartbroken. The story behind it? Jake had dumped her. I stared at the screenshot for a long time, waiting to feel satisfaction, vindication, maybe even joy. But all I felt was, nothing. Because by then, I had already moved on. Betrayal doesn't just end relationships, it reshapes you. It forces you to see people for who they really are, not who you wanted them to be. Sarah showed me that not everyone who calls themselves your best friend actually is. Jake showed me that not everyone who says, "I love you," means it. But I also learned something else. I'm stronger than I thought. Strong enough to lose them both and still keep going. Strong enough to rebuild my life without the people who tore it apart. And if I had to choose between keeping fake friends and toxic love, or choosing myself, I'll choose me every single time.